welcome to the IMS webinar series. Welcome back to many. I'm Aaron Blair, and I've been your presenter here during this entire 7-week series. I've been working with IMS and Retail Pro for the past 17 years, doing everything from project management to implementation to training. So far, we covered e-commerce integration to Retail Pro, managing inventory, Retail Pro Prism, and Retail Pro reports in the first 4 of our 7 different webinars, all of which are focused on 3 areas: making money now, getting things done while you have the time, and being ready to open back up. Hopefully, a lot of you guys have already started that in some capacity with a lot of the phase 1 reopenings going into effect. So, what can you expect from these webinars? Well, first and foremost, you can expect the webinar right here and right now. At the end of the webinar, we'll be addressing questions, so please post them in the questions section of the webinar control panel, and our moderators will organize them to be handled during the Q&A. Webinars should run about 45 minutes, possibly to 1 hour. Really just depends on the quantity and depth of the questions that we get. Additionally, as normal, we'll be introducing polls throughout the session, and your participation is always greatly appreciated. The polls are anonymous. The results, as many of you know, we're only going to display as a percentage of the overall feedback. Following each webinar, a recording will be made available to those who attended to share with other members of your team who were unable to attend. All attendees from all the webinars will receive a link to all of the recordings. Someone from our team here at IMS will also be reaching out to you for some feedback and to provide you with some one-on-one insight and follow-up for your specific business needs related to each webinar's topic. So, as we usually do, we'll do a quick recap before we talk about today's topic, which is IMS service offerings. We reviewed all the new and exciting features of reports and business intelligence, and we got a live look at the updated user interface and user experience. And last week really wrapped up the Retail Pro focus of our series. We got to do a little bit of demo with the last 2, and we got to look at some advanced features in the first 2, and certainly e-commerce. But this week, we're going to change focus a little bit, and we're going to talk about IMS and really what services we can provide you beyond just basic POS support. And a kind of a theme of this that I want to reiterate a couple times is really being able to provide you with an all-in-one IMS solution. So the 2 areas of focus for that solution that we're going to talk about today are IMS Cloud Hosting and IMS Managed Services. Before we get into that, let's actually go ahead and do our first poll right now. So this first poll is going to be about our first topic, which is our cloud hosting. How familiar are you with cloud hosting in general? And while we allow a minute for the responses to come in, as I normally do, I wanted to take the time to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope everyone had a great holiday weekend and you're enjoying a little bit of a shorter week. I certainly know I had a good weekend and I'm enjoying a short week myself. And we really want to thank everyone as well for allowing IMS to be your trusted business partner. Okay, just waiting for a few more votes to come in. Looks like we've got a good percentage of response. And why don't we give this about 10 more seconds and then we'll go ahead and close up the poll and take a look at those results. All right, let's go ahead and close that one up. If I can have one of our moderators do that. There we go. So it looks like a pretty even split. It's definitely a good split between, kind of I don't know really what cloud hosting is, to having some familiarity with it, to using cloud hosting services now. Not a lot of familiar, but not using. But I think we got a really good mix, which is kind of what I was going for. Some of this is going to be a bit basic, some of it's going to be a bit more advanced. But like all of these webinars, I try to mix in a little bit of everything, a little bit for everyone. So let's go ahead and close up those results and let's get into our topics. So for cloud hosting, before we get into the details of what cloud hosting is, let's talk a little bit about why. Sure, it's nice to have a server you don't have to think about, you don't have to manage hardware and cabling, have loud fans, heat, but there's a much bigger, much more important reason, which is disaster recovery. These images represent a few of the disasters that can affect your equipment, your data, and of course your entire business. And while we certainly cannot help you prevent a flood, we can put you in a position to where your sensitive equipment and data are far away from that danger. We can, of course, help with virus prevention and malware, and even help you minimize fire risk that's caused in some cases by poorly managed hardware or server rooms. Believe me, I've seen many storage closet / server room / break room setups over the years. And here are just a few statistics I wanted to kind of throw in here. These were published in 2019. They're related to not only the types of disasters we just looked at, but some other common failures as well. So after a disaster, it's a published statistic that 40% of small to medium-sized businesses do not reopen. And of course, I know that's not just because they lost a server with their Retail Pro data, but we have known some businesses that we've worked with in the past that it was a direct contributing factor and really just added to the decision. And this is another interesting one, which is over a 3-year period, 96% of businesses experience some form of outage. And understand that this was specific to having equipment or server on site. So natural disaster, of course, we talked about. Hardware failures, right? These things don't run forever. Power outages, and this could be in a storm, or a lot of you guys, have told us you're in, say, shopping malls or shopping centers, or in remote areas where power outages are just a normal thing. Software failures, of course, this can happen at many levels of operating system and application. Additionally, data corruption, external security breaches. So the difference between having a server in your building that's simply plugged into, say, Xfinity or Verizon's modem and accessed by the outside world, or versus having it in a secure data center. And user error, right? This could quite simply be that you've got that server where people walk and eat and drink and things just happen. I'm not talking about people going on the server and causing data corruptions, but something as simply as people bumping into it or spilling something on it. These things are all just realistic things that we see all the time. Okay, so that's the why, and now the what. First, let's start off simple and talk about what is the cloud. The cloud is simply a collection of computers that exist in data centers around the world that you access through the internet. This provides a major advantage because someone else is managing the computers. In our cloud hosting environment, IMS is managing the operating system, Windows, managing Windows updates, managing antivirus, data backup, and a lot more. You simply connect to it from anywhere with an internet connection and go. That means that your Retail Pro is anywhere you are, any time of day or night. And because it's a server, you can also have shared files and other applications used within your organization to achieve maximum value on that investment. And honestly, that stuff is all well and good, but the biggest advantage is the backup and failover that cloud hosting provides you. For starters, our servers are located in highly secure, purpose-built facilities that are monitored 24/7, 365. These places were literally designed to house and host servers, and that's it. They have better security than most banks and disaster prevention measures to cover almost any possible scenario. Data is not only maintained, but also backed up for quick access in the event of a failure. We can even go a step further and have a full failover server in a different location for almost immediate recovery. And I have an example of what that looks like coming up in a couple of slides. So yeah, that all sounds great, but how much does it cost? While I'm not going to get into specific pricing here, I can tell you that feature for feature, we are the lowest cost cloud solution of all the major players, yes, including Amazon. So talk to your account manager as a follow-up to this, and they can review specific needs and options with you. Plus, remember, the cost is not just an upfront investment of buying a server versus annual cloud hosting, it's the cost of overall maintenance of that server versus a fully maintained and monitored server from IMS in the cloud. And also, the cost of uptime, because disasters, let's be honest, they don't happen on a schedule. I could give you many examples of down servers that have caused major issues throughout the years, but there's one IMS customer I always think of first. I'm not going to name them by name, but it's a very large university bookstore that several years ago, they had their own on-site server, which they chose to provide and self-manage, and it went down during Parents' Weekend. They estimated the revenue loss at around $100,000, which is about 10% of the $1 million that they do normally during that weekend. And this was all as they scrambled to work manually and get replacement parts for their server. Okay, so let's look at some basic info on our cloud solution specifically. First off, a lot of people don't know this. We've been doing this for 10 years now, right? So cloud hosting is nothing new to IMS. We operate in completely secure, accessible to you, dependable and redundant cloud hosting data centers. We have multiple data centers with high availability on both the East Coast and the West Coast. We have local backup and something called vaulted backup to alternate between those bi-coastal, those East and West Coast data centers. So the backups aren't staying on the same server as your data, they're moving around so that they're in multiple locations around the country. And again, it's completely managed by IMS. This is an all-in-one IMS solution, which includes security, not just your antivirus, but also multi-factor authentication. So a lot of people are now kind of discovering what this is. I personally have been using it for years. So getting a text message or an email code, a one-time use code that you have to use to access the server. Asset discovery and management, enterprise monitoring, so not just the server, but across the whole enterprise through our iManage tools. And of course, as we said before, operating system, patch management, change management. And we're also using now a virtual desktop infrastructure. So for those of you who have done cloud hosting in the past, where you may be used to just using a remote desktop and accessing what looks to be the desktop of a server, we're talking about really, it'll feel like your own PC that you're accessing against that server that's going to have your own set of programs and files. It's going to be secure against other users' access, and of course their accounts are going to be secure against your access, depending on how all that's set up and configured. And along with that, application and environment hosting. So if you have other applications outside of Retail Pro, certainly we can look to host those as well, as I said, to get the most value out of the cost of that hosting in that server. And honestly, there's certain intangibles too. Things like physically cleaning your server. I don't have it here on the slide, but when you have a server in your building, especially those of you who work in apparel, we know how fast dust can build up in computer equipment. So simply shutting down the server and taking it and pulling it open and cleaning fans and cleaning motherboards, right? This is stuff you never have to worry about again. And here's the example of that failover setup in 2 of our East Coast data centers. So it's a pretty simple, straightforward example. Let's say that on the left side, your server and your data is hosted in New York 1. Well, New York 1 server is going to have a name and an IP address and all the things necessary for stations to communicate with it. Well, if something goes down or happens to that server in New York 1, within seconds, New York 2 can actually assume the identity of New York 1. It will then have the same computer name, the same IP address, all the same information, so that the connecting stations don't even know that anything happened. And then at that point, whatever issues or maintenance needs to be done on New York 1 will be completed, and New York 2 will simply become your running server until failover is needed again, hopefully far in the future, and it would fail back over the other way. So again, we're talking seconds of downtime. In many cases, wouldn't even be noticed by the user. IMS would simply get the alerts. The data center staff would do what they need to do to make any replacements or do any maintenance, and you would just continue operations. And I can't tell you what the value of that is, again, on a busy weekend or opening of a season or the middle of summer for many of you guys. So just another important thing to think about when you start to look at cloud hosting and really kind of put together what makes sense for you. Okay, so that was an overview on our cloud hosting solution. Now let's look at the IMS Managed Services, really to encompass a broader set of needs, including IT, systems operation, and all of those other things that really provide that all-in-one IMS solution. So to get us started on this section, let's do another quick poll. And this poll is pretty straightforward. What level of managed service help do you think you might need? Just as before, on your screen in front of you, there should be a poll question awaiting your input. And for this question, I want you to think about high-level answers, as most of these polls are. I know that everyone's going to have unique needs, but in general, what bucket would you say that you fall into? What closely matches your business? And I'll go ahead and give just a minute or two to get some responses in. Looks like we've got about 50% of people responding so far, so we'll give this just another minute. All right, looks like we have a bulk of attendees have their answers in. Let's go ahead and close this one up and let's take a look at the results. Okay, so just as before, and maybe I am making these buckets a little too generic, but I think we get the point across with these answers. So it looks like we definitely have some groups on here that have a dedicated IT staff, and that's great. Really what I'm trying to get from this is I want people to understand that in one way, shape, or form, you need people to perform these tasks. We do have a number of responses that, your setup is simple. Maybe you don't need dedicated IT support, and that's fine, because what we're talking about is really all flavors of IT. We're not saying you need to have a full-time, round-the-clock person to assist you with this, but there are things that you need to consider, and we'll see those as we move forward. But yeah, I think kind of what I expected, just to see a little bit of everything, and hopefully after this, and we'll see more. If I did this poll again, we'll see more of IMS being that all-in-one solution when you really think about what we can provide well beyond just point of sale. All right, so as I said, managed services, they are going to help in a lot of different areas, but overall, the broad idea is they're just going to help you focus on being a retailer, not IT and systems operations managers, right? Do what you guys do best. Be a retailer. We're going to help you optimize your use of Retail Pro and associated products or plugins or developed applications. And this should help drive improvements to your overall KPIs and maximize your ROI and help you with revenue growth, right? Because at the end of the day, we're taking tasks away from you that don't involve you selling product. And we're giving you more time back to do that and really to help you build a good base or a launch pad. If you want to expand, even if it's just, I want to expand my store size or my product line, and hopefully I want to, expand to multiple locations or websites. That's what we want to help you with. We want to help you build that foundation that expansion can come quickly and easily. So when we think about the different work types involved with running a retail operations, really any business for that matter, we see them as falling into 5 areas: infrastructure, sysops or systems operations, business operations, software applications, and software development. So infrastructure, including power, network, facilities; sysops, including functionality and use of Retail Pro; business operations, meaning how you run your business kind of as it relates to the system, to inventory, to merchandising; software applications, so again, not just Retail Pro, but things like accounting programs or security applications, and really any other software that is kind of part of that mix of how you run your business. And software development, that just accounts for any custom needs that you may have. And we're going to get into details on all these areas here in a minute, but I just want to give you kind of a broad overview and basis. And then you can see as that flows down, all of these or some of these can be managed by really any of the 3 channels. You can either do it yourself, internal; we can do it for you, IMS; or you have a third party do that for you, whether it be your infrastructure, whether it be your general IT, whether it be software development. But if we flow down through the IMS channel, we can see that you have 3 dedicated resources allocated to you. One is your sales account manager, one is your technical account manager, and the other is our support desk. So support desk for day-to-day assistance and support, your technical account manager to scope out projects, installations, upgrades, anything of that nature, and your sales account manager to help you with putting together the cost and the impact of those projects. So as I said, this gives us a good roadmap for managed services, and then let's look at a little bit more detail of each of the 5 areas. System admin or infrastructure, this has a lot of components to it, covers a wide variety of things, and unfortunately without proper management, many of these can get missed. So no matter who it is, internal, third party, or IMS, someone needs to understand and manage these. Need to manage hardware. We've talked a lot about that with the cloud hosting, right? The maintenance, the drivers, but also things like clearing temp files and monitoring and managing disk space so that hard drives don't fill up. Configuration, networking. And I'll say this again, but no matter how simple your network is, there are still things to consider, right? If you're a single store with 1 point of sale, that's fine, but you still have to access the outside world. You have to get to the internet. And that also allows the access from the outside world to you if things are not set up and configured properly. Power, we touched on before. And again, operating system updates, maintenance, security. So really all the things that we talked about with the cloud hosting, but talking about it in a broader sense, because we have additional computers just beyond our server. And backup, same thing, right? Hardware, software, schedule and maintenance, recovery and reinstallation. So if we are hit with one of those issues, let's say, a malware attack or, the crypto locker virus that's been going around a lot lately, those are all things that we need to have a backup and recovery plan for. Systems operations, that also covers a lot of topics, and it's just as important as your infrastructure to manage and maintain. So these are things beyond just the day-to-day maintenance, right? Things like having a lab environment to be able to test updates before they're deployed into the field. Coordination of installation, reinstallation, coordination of update testing. So again, back to the lab environment, being able to take an update, test it, make sure it works with every piece of your current setup. You know, an update comes out from Retail Pro or really any software manufacturer, it's almost impossible for them to account for every possible variable that update is going to interact with, especially when we think about things like custom software applications that you may have had developed. So the coordination of testing and installation of those updates, ECM or polling, you know, for version 8, version 9, really understanding that process and monitoring it, opening and end of day procedures. And I'm not talking about, you know, counting my bank at the beginning and the end of the day, but talking about things more like, you know, we help customers with monitoring held receipts at the end of the day to make sure those don't build up too bad. Monitoring and purging documents, merging duplicate customers. So all of these kind of maintenance functions are things that we help people with all the time. PCI compliance, it's a huge one. Anyone who's been through or been part of a PCI audit can attest to the pages and pages and hundreds of check boxes. Anything from your network to the computers themselves to your software applications and everything involved in PCI compliance, and really being compliant, because if you're not, the fines, the penalties, they can be very heavy. Credit card procedures and checks, really along with PCI compliance. Reporting, you know, we help people with making sure that nightly reports run every night and that they get to the right folders and they get to the right printers. So just monitoring a lot of that stuff. And third-party plugins, whether that's something you had done for you, you purchased through IMS as a Retail Pro plugin, or IMS developed for you, the maintenance operations of all that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more on the last section. And for some of you guys who are seasonal, let's say sports or beach retailers, or you just have certain times a year where you're much busier than others, having us do things like preseason checklists and implementation to make sure that equipment that's coming out of a closet or out of storage is getting dusted off and turned on and checked. You know, we take it through a multi-point checklist to make sure that everything is up and running when you're ready to go. Business operations, it's a bit more of a focused area. So it's the management of Retail Pro system on an ongoing basis as it pertains to things like your maintenance and management of departments and vendors and items. You know, I'm not talking about the creation of that stuff. You know, that's you as a retailer, you understand your product and business, but more talking about the cleanliness of data and doing maintenance on that type of stuff. Order documents, as I mentioned before, purging, transaction documents, making sure that everything looks right with all of those. Customers, employees, security, and reporting. So a lot of carryover from systems operations, but really just more from a business side. And yeah, I know what people are going to say. Well, it's my system, so I do these things, or I pay someone else full time to do it. But you know, you got to ask yourself: is that the best use of your time, or is that the best use of an employee's time? You know, what else could you or your people be doing to help you grow and make money? To be out selling product, the thing that you do best. Software application includes kind of the non-business operations tasks, which are the ones we just talked about. For those of you with a support contract, some of these are actually included in that, but for our full group here, I wanted to quickly review them together. So initial installation, setup, configuration, and testing does not have to be from the standpoint of a new client, but could be you're opening another location or you're adding point of sale stations. These are all things that need to be done and considered. Completion of that on-site installation, go live support, reinstallation of applications, new releases. So really a lot of the stuff that we've covered in different areas, but just from an installation and more of an upfront maintenance standpoint. And lastly, software development. As I alluded to before, software development is really just anything custom you need for your system and for your business. IMS has a full-time development staff, so if you need something, just ask. We can help scope out the request and work with you to understand the process, right? This is kind of the same idea of just be a retailer. You don't need to know how software is developed. You just need to say, hey, I would love it if the system could do X, Y, and Z. Let us do all of this stuff here that you see on the screen, right? Create a roadmap for that development. Consider version control. Are you on 8, 9, Prism? And then what's going to happen as you upgrade, right? What's that upgrade path? QA testing on our side. This is where a lab environment comes into play to say we want to test this on your system, on your data, but not interfere with your live environment until we get to the point of you beta testing. Updates to that plugin as you do updates to Retail Pro. Improvements. So maybe a year goes by and you say, this is great that it does X, Y, Z so well. Maybe I'd also like it to do ABC. Great, let's talk about that. Let's loop back to the roadmap. Let's add those things in and go down our process. Bug fixes, and then the overall plugin development. So all of these things to be considered when you simply say, hey, I'd really like if the system could do that. There's a lot that goes into that, which is software development, and IMS has just been doing that for years and years and years. So that covers all 5 of the work types, certainly at a high level. And we're going to go back to doing 3 polls today, like we did in the first couple webinars. So we're going to do one last one before we look at some next steps and take some questions. For this one, after reviewing all the work types to be done, the stuff we just went over, how confident are you that your current managed services setup is accomplishing this work? Again, broad buckets. I just want to get some feedback and kind of continue the conversation as we go through all of this stuff and really see what goes into running not just IT, but your business as well. Okay, looks like the votes came in pretty quickly on this one. Let's just give that about 10 more seconds. We'll see if the last few people want to weigh in. Otherwise, we will go over these results. All right, let's go ahead and close that one up and let's take a look. So I actually kind of expected this. I didn't expect it to be a dead split between the 3, but certainly this is roughly what I expected, right? You look at all this stuff, you watch this webinar, you think back on the past webinars and all the stuff that really goes into your system, and yeah, there's people out there that realize I need more help than I thought, right? I'm doing it, it's working, but is it really working the best that it can? Somewhat confident, I want to review it. That is probably the best answer, to be honest, because there's always a chance to review and see what else we could be helping you with. And then the other third, very confident, our system works, and that's awesome, right? I'm not here to tell you today that, hey, you need all the stuff I'm presenting you because you're not doing it right? I absolutely am not saying that. What we are saying is that there are people out there who need some support with this. There are people out there who need a lot of support with this. But I know there are also people out there in that third who have full-time IT staffs, They have a process and a procedure for most, if not all, of the things that we're covering here today. All right, so let's close that up. And I promise I have just a couple more slides for you here. And the next one is real simple, right? I know that was a lot of information to take in, and we ran through it pretty quickly. So as I said, I'm going to keep this part very simple. Really, for this webinar, the title of this slide should just say next step, because there's really only one thing to do to get started. Meet with us. Let us walk you through a business review, right? You're not committing to anything. We just want to simply say, hey, where could we help you? And what would that model look like? Whether that be just for a hosting solution, whether that be for managed services through IMS, or whether it be the term that I keep using, which is an all-in-one IMS solution. So again, quite simply, what areas do you need help with, right? Where can we as your partner be doing more for you to work more with you? Okay, always my favorite part, because this is a little bit more on the fly, which I enjoy. We're going to look at some questions. So our moderators have been putting some of those together. Let me just go to my question window here. And let me pull these up. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to do these in the order they came in. So typically these are going to kind of follow along with the topics, and it looks, yeah, it looks that way. There's quite a few here on cloud hosting. So let's get started with those. What's the minimum size store you recommend for cloud hosting? It's a great question, and to be honest, there is no minimum, right? We can't really compare the cost of a cloud server to the number of workstations. Certainly, that price throttles up and down depending on resource needs, right? A one store, one station does not need the same amount of processors and RAM and hard drive space as someone with, say, one large store or multiple large stores. So really, there's no answer that I'm ever going to give that says you're too small for a cloud server. Because when you look at the advantages of it and the different scenarios, think about a small store that does very high-end purchases, right? So what if it comes down to losing one of those purchases throughout the course of a year? You know, is your price point high enough that that pays for a cloud server? Just being able to have that failover, that backup, and really to not have any of those maintenance or management headaches. What is the price structure? I am assuming that references the cloud because it's kind of in that section, that early section of questions. As I said, I'm not going to give out specific pricing, but again, throttle up and down. We can certainly look at what your needs might be, how many users, how much resource you need, and all of those things. So your sales account manager will be happy to kind of help you spec that stuff out. In fact, I would be involved with them through that process, so I'd be happy to do that with you as well. Is there any maintenance required by me for a cloud server? No. Quite simply, no. You connect to it, you use it, we maintain it. We do everything that we talked about in this presentation. There are no gotchas. There are no, oh, by the way, here's the one thing that you guys have to maintain. The only caveat to that would be if you are installing another application that we really have nothing to do with, and it came to doing things like updates or installation or configuration of that application. But as far as the cloud server itself, absolutely not. That is our responsibility, and that is what you pay for. Let's see. How hard is it to get my current data into the cloud? It's not. So this is really, you know, whether you have an on-premise server or whether you're using the cloud, if your on-premise server goes down and your data needs to be moved, we have to do it anyway. So it's simply a matter of taking a backup of your data, moving it over, and then telling the stations that talk to it who to talk to now, because that information will change. Certainly, if you're looking to do an upgrade anyway, say from 8 or 9 to Prism, this would be a great time to do it, as we've got to move your data somewhere else no matter what. We might as well kill those two birds with one stone and get you up to the cloud. Like I said, a lot of questions about the cloud today, and that's good. It seems like there's a lot of interest there. Does it matter what version of Retail Pro I'm on for the cloud? It does, in the sense that, you know, version 8 runs really certified on Windows 7 for the most part. Some of the newer versions, the last versions of it, can run on Windows 10. And the reason I say 7 and 10 when we talk about a server, what a lot of people don't realize is that server operating systems are really just a different version of, say, a Windows 7. So Server 2008 is really the server version of Windows 7. I think that's right. But like 2016 and 2019 server, those are kind of the Windows 10 version. So it matters with version 8. Version 9 in Prism, no. We're going to have you on the latest server operating system, so you don't have to worry about any of that. If I have an IT person or staff now, would I save money going with your hosting and managed services compared to what I pay now for, say, salaries, benefits, etc.? Most likely, yes. You know, I'm not going to tell you that if you have full-time IT people who have plenty on their plate, and this would just simply help them to alleviate some of that, that it would cost you any less, but it would cost you less over time in their ability to do other things, other projects. And, you know, the other end of that is if you're paying someone full-time just to manage servers, yeah, I'm not telling you we're looking to, you know, put people out of jobs, but certainly this may be a better way to go. Talk to us about it, and we can kind of help you weigh out that decision and those costs. My servers back up security footage, counting, etc. To be truly free of on-site servers, can I store all my data on your cloud? Yeah, for the most part, yes. Right, if we're simply talking about storage space and you want to put that somewhere, we just need to scope out what that is. I know personally, you know, I have security cameras in and around my home. I know how much storage space that takes up. I have multiple terabyte hard drives because I like to save a good, decent amount of time. So we would just need to figure out what compression is like, how often you record, how much that data is taking up. But certainly we can add as much hard drive space as you want to that cloud in order to make that worthwhile. Things like QuickBooks, other applications, yeah, if they're just straight backups, like you want to zip backup of your QuickBooks information, sure, no problem. If you want to operate QuickBooks off of that server or other applications, we just need to talk through them because overall, you know, there's just certain applications that don't play nicely together based on a lot of different factors. So we would just have to, as I said, really understand what your setup is. I wasn't kidding. There's a lot of interest in the cloud, but that's good. I think that's, unless any more pop in, those are the cloud questions. Do have a couple more here, so I want to cover off on these last two and go from there. So what does an all-in-one solution with IMS look like? I guess I used that term enough, didn't I, that somebody did ask. Yeah, the all-in-one solution is really what you want it to be. Our preference would be we handle all the things that we can do for you. Now, that is not always going to be the case, right? If you've got some people who do some stuff for you, you know, we're not here to tell you to get rid of them. You have an absolutely great third-party IT company that is local and you like giving them business and they give you business, anything like that. Honestly, we're not telling you to get rid of them, but we are telling you that there are things that we need to work with them on. So even just a business review so that we can all better understand communication. right? If they go and make a change that we're unaware of, and then you call the help desk and say, hey, something happened to Retail Pro, I have no idea what, we can spend a lot of time and quite frankly, a lot of your money trying to figure that out, versus if we just had a line of communication and the network company, for example, said, hey, we need to change the static IP address on this router. What is going to be affected on Retail Pro? And we'd come up with a plan, we'd know it up front, and we'd make the change together. Really, like I said, we'd love to do everything for you, from IT to data maintenance to everything else. But we feel like there's a solution somewhere in there that fits for everyone. So yeah, great question. Okay, and this is the last one, and I think this is a great question too, because I honestly thought this was a little confusing myself. I am confused on business operations. Would you come in and run my Retail Pro for me? No. So business operations, as I said, there's some blurry lines there around kind of what that is and what can be outsourced, so to speak, to IMS. We can cover that in a business review with you, but we're talking about things like data maintenance. We're talking about a lot of the stuff that we probably covered after this question. So hopefully you got some answers there. But no, like I said, we're not going to get your fall catalog and put in, your inventory items for you, because we don't understand the products that you do. We have hundreds of customers with thousands of locations. We simply couldn't manage all that. We're looking to help you with things that we could manage that you don't need to be doing. I'll say it one last time because that was the last question. We're looking to help you with that all-in-one IMS solution. Just had to throw that in there one more time. Okay, and then as always, just a simple thank you. I like to end on that. I know that everybody, your time is valuable during the week here on a Thursday morning. So I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. I always hope you find our time to be valuable together, and join us for the next one, which is going to be next Thursday at 11 a.m. And next week, we're going to look at some more IMS related stuff with some of our service dashboard and reporting to help those of you who utilize us for service better understand how we do that. And even people who don't, please join us. Understand what we do and why that kind of stuff, a support contract, can be valuable kind of as a follow-up to this IMS Managed Services. So from all of us here at IMS, especially for me as your presenter, I just hope that everyone has a great rest of the day and a great weekend. Thank you.